Hey folks, so today our job is to figure out how to multiply vectors. Okay, now that doesn't really mean much in the sense of the word multiply, but we do call it a product. Okay, now this one in particular we call a scalar product or a dot product because it's denoted by a dot. So if we're going to want to multiply two vectors, it'll be A dot B. Okay, now you know how with numbers you could either write 2.3 or 2 cross 3 and they all mean 6. Okay, with vectors, this type of multiplication, the dot product, is going to be different than a cross product. Cross product I'll tell you about later, but it's not part of our curriculum. Okay, so we're going to focus on what we call the dot product or the scalar product. One of the reasons why it's called a scalar product is because when we multiply two vectors using a dot product, we get a scalar answer. So we'll get a number answer. Alright? So the reason why we have a dot product is because we wanted to figure out a way to measure the angle between two tail-to-tail vectors. Alright, so we're going to call that theta. So people came up with a formula and we called it the dot product. Okay, now I'll go over how the formula is derived with you. It's fairly simple using the cosine law. But what I want you to know is the formula for the dot product, A dot B, is the magnitude of A times the magnitude of B times the cosine of the angle between them. Okay, so magnitude A, magnitude B, cosine of the angle between them. Alright, now that's knowing the length of that and the length of that and the angle between them. Okay, that's directly controlled by which way these vectors are pointing, right? So there's got to be a formula that doesn't deal with the angle, but in fact just deals with the horizontal and vertical movements of the vectors. And there is. So that's the other formula. If we want to multiply two vectors without knowing the angle in between them, all we have to do is multiply x times x plus y times y plus z times z and add them all together. So this is formula number 1 for the dot product, and that's formula number 2. Both of them are good. So if that's vector A and that's vector B, that's also the dot product. So these two things mean exactly the same. So that dot product and that dot product mean exactly the same thing. They're just going to be used in different circumstances, right? So let's talk for a second about when we use what. Okay, so given magnitudes and an angle, so if we know the magnitudes and the angle between them, of course, we're going to use that dot product. So given magnitudes and an angle, we're going to use the fact that A dot B is equal to magnitude A, magnitude B, times the cosine of the angle between them. Okay? Now, if we actually have the x, y, z coordinates, then what we're going to do is we're going to do A dot B. We're going to actually write out the coordinates. Right, so if we have x1, y1, z1 dot x2, y2, z2, we're going to use the formula x1, x2 plus y1, y2 plus z1, z2. Both of these will give us the same answer. It just depends what kind of information we're given. Alright, so let's try to do an example. So what we want to do is find the magnitudes A and B. Alright, so that's the first part of this question. So the first part of the question is to find the magnitudes. So let's do the magnitude of A first. Okay, so remember the magnitude is the square root of 2 squared plus 3 squared plus 1 squared. Alright, so that's root 14. And the magnitude of B is the square root of negative 2 squared plus 1 squared plus 2 squared, which is 4 plus 1 plus 4 is 9. Root 9 is 3. Okay, so there's my two magnitudes. Now it asks me to find A dot B. Okay, remember what we said. If we know the magnitudes and the angle, we can use our magnitude A, magnitude B cos theta. If we don't, then we have to just multiply out the x's and the y's and the z's. I don't know theta, so what I have to do is I have to use this formula. So 231 dot negative 212 is equal to 2 times negative 2 plus 3 times 1 plus 1 times 2. So that's negative 4 plus 3 plus 2 is 1. Okay, so A dot B is equal to 1. Magnitude of A is root 14. Magnitude of B is 3. Now I want to use all that information to figure out the angle between A and B. Okay, well, remember that these two things mean exactly the same thing. Okay, so what that means is that I can actually set up an equation that says that that is equal to that. Okay, so what I know is that magnitude A, so let's write out the equations first. Magnitude A times the magnitude of B times cos theta is one way to write the dot product, and x1, x2 plus y1, y2 plus z1, z2 is another way to write the dot product. Okay, now let's just fill in what we know. Okay, so root 14, 3 cos theta, I don't know what theta is all this stuff. So that's 1. Okay, so now all we have to do is isolate for cos theta. So cos theta is 1 over 3 roots of 14, and I'll let you guys figure this out, but theta is going to be cos inverse 1 over 3 roots of 14. Okay, so when you come back to class, make sure you know what theta is. Alright, so I'm going to give you some homework so that you can practice the use of this formula and the use of this formula. Alright, so remember, if you know magnitude A, magnitude B, and the angle, you're going to use this formula for the dot product. If you know x, y, z, you're going to use this for the formula. Now, if it's a two-dimensional vector, no problem. We just drop off the z and we have x1, x2 plus y1, y2. Alright, so there's the homework questions I want you to try. Just numbers 1, 2, and 3. Alright, so bring those to class with you and then we'll keep going. Alright, thanks folks, and I'll see you later.